Tēnā koe i te tuakana, tēnā koe te taumata, tēnā koutou katoa ko tai mai nei, ki te whakarongo i te kaupapa. E karanga mai nei i o tātou. Ko waiau, ko ngā toki matawhaarua te waka, ko whakarongo te maunga, ko utukura te awa, ko ngā puhi te iwi, ko Ngāti Tora te hapu, i te tahu o tōku māma, ko Joyce te whānau, ko Tia hui a Dawes tōku ingoa. As I remember that conversation, I thought, it'd be great for someone to talk about Koha. And a week later, I'll whisper a little bit more. All right. So, in March this year, a new word entered the Oxford English Dictionary, and there's no surprise here. Koha. You can't read it, but I'll show you what's here. So we've got a definition here. We've got a noun. We've got some pronunciation guides. We're told the origin is a borrowing from Māori. The etymon is koha, so that's the earliest, the simplest form of the word. We've got inflections, how the word can be used elsewhere. So on our dictionary entry here, we have kohas. We can't use that in this room. But the etymology, so here's the origin and development of the kupu. It's Māori meaning gift, present, offering, donation, contribution, instruction, or advice. Okay, so far so good. Now within the New Zealand context, we have the definition of a gift, an offering, a donation, or a contribution. So in many ways, having Māori words broadly used and acknowledged within dictionaries is a good thing. It shows the development of a New Zealand English. But it's also unhelpful in that we often don't see the underpinning values of some of these terms that are being used. We are increasingly seeing the use of koha in research. So a lot of researchers are using this term, both Pākehā and Māori. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. So I want to give a bit of context of research ethics and the way in which it is being used. So as we've heard, the role of our ethics committee is to review a research application that comes into us. So researchers will propose a project. We review it in terms of how are the people treated within that project, how is the information that they provide us, how are we protecting their mātauranga. It often feels like we're the villains. Lucky we have Tikani as the face of the committee. So we review our information sheets, we review the study design. We can comment on the study design, but our focus really is around how people are being treated. So we review these based on a set of international principles. So Lily has mentioned this. So these principles that we apply as ethics committees around the world, beneficence, meaning something good must happen to the participant. Non-maleficence, meaning nothing bad can happen to the participant. Justice, is it compatible with the law? Are people being treated fairly? And autonomy. This one revolves around, are participants given the freedom to choose to be involved in the research practice? Beneficence. Beneficence is a Latin word. Non-maleficence. That maleficence is another Latin word. Justice, from justitia, another Latin word. autonomy, autonomia, that's a Greek word. So we've got these set of principles that are deeply embedded within the Western tradition. These principles, as Lily pointed out, have been developed over time. The Nuremberg Code, the Cartwright Affair, the Helsinki Declaration, Belmont Report. So these have all been developed over time. And these principles aren't bad. In fact, they're vital for protecting participants. But they obviously do not account for other ways of being. And I have to say, it's great being at the Waipareta Ethics Committee because we never have to justify our viewpoint. Sitting on other ethics committees, constantly having to say why something is not appropriate, and always being marginalised around that. So I want to acknowledge the other committee members here, and Hector saying, for his kind words, you can probably tell me anything now. Within our reviews, we pay particular attention to Koha and how it's being described. And we are seeing a wide range of use. So increasingly, we are seeing a shift away from more traditional ideas of Koha to a definition of Koha more like this bottom definition here. So I'm just going to make some observations about that. So I just want to begin with providing a bit of a traditional context. Now, I'm well aware that there will be many people here who are very familiar with the term and the process. But the most obvious example I could think of was in the process of the pohere. The act of coming together and building relationships is guided by certain processes that have been passed down through generations. We know this. At a pohere, there are procedures that guide both the tangata whenua, the hosts, the manuhiri. And it's a formal occasion and regarded as very tapu. The manuhiri gather beyond the ātea. Koha might be collected out there before the kaikaranga calls to the manuhiri, beckoning them onto the marae. The manuhiri move forward. They make karanga in response, acknowledging the mana of the hosts. The manuhiri are then directed by the hosts to a clearly separated space. Once seated, a karakia opens proceedings before a series of speeches are made by each side, in which the relationship between those who have gathered is explored. Now, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I'm coming to my point. Wire to follow each speech, endorsing the message of each speaker, and towards the end of the speech-making process, the manuhiri will offer a koha to the hosts. Although, there are other terms that are used. He taonga, he whakaaro, he aroha. And I believe, and I may be corrected on this, but some iwi prefer not to use the word koha because of its tapu associations of takuha, tā koha. But the giving of the koha marks an important part in the proceedings, cementing the bond between the manuhiri and hosts. Now, that's the common form. It can be a very public demonstration, although this does vary from marae to marae. Hirini Mead describes the very public demonstration of it, while Cleve Barlow, when describing koha in the north, talks about koha being given in a much more discreet way, away from the public eye. And of course, koha can be given in various forms and on a smaller scale, in a building, in someone's home, but the underlying process is always underpinned by tikanga. The koha can then be accepted or rejected. but the authority to do so rests in the hands of the tangata whenua. So in the terms of in the research context, that decision is left to the person being asked to participate in the study. The placement allows the host to consider the offering and to decide whether to refuse or accept it, and clearly marks the authority and mana of those present. So there's quite there's a big part of koha. So that's something of a traditional context. Now, as I scrambled over the past 2 weeks to look for comments around koha, I discovered that there's actually not a lot within the contemporary research context. Taha Mason-Jury has something to say on the topic, and as always, he's very articulate about it. He describes koha as a circular pattern of exchanges that's more about relationships than costs incurred. He outlines 2 aspects of the koha practice. The first is the desire of the visiting group to present a gift that will encourage the development of a relationship. The second aspect is the acceptance of the gift. And by implication, it's that development of the establishment of the relationship. So Jury's discussion around this is pretty much aligned with the traditional koha. But he adds an important point. The koha is understood as being less about the generosity of the giver and more on the obligations placed on the receiver. More on the obligations placed on the receiver. You are correct. Hirani Mead talks about koha as a tradition of gift giving, and it makes explicit that gift giving is part of an exchange of gifts. He draws attention to the misunderstanding of the term that has crept in, particularly with the emphasis on money. He describes the most important thing about gift exchange is that once activated, the exchange comes under the rules of tapu. This means the relationship needs to be maintained, nurtured, protected. So what's very clear with those 2 scholars is the sense of obligation. And I know that our kaumata will have a much better understanding of this than me. Richard Benton. Now, Richard Benton tracks through older manuscripts to look at key concepts. He talks about the practice of gift giving. And again, his emphasis is on koha as marking or cementing a social relationship. So a really strong theme coming through here. Paul, together with his colleagues, Maui Hudson and Moi Milne, in their creation of the Te Ara Tika, guidelines, which is a fantastic publication. Now they provided these guidelines to support both Māori and non-Māori researchers to identify key Māori values that guide Māori frameworks. Great. Perhaps a little surprisingly, they don't really discuss koha, other than to say the onus is on the researcher to ensure that the nature of the koha is understood by the communities in receipt of the koha. Don't know if Paul can remember that. Others have been much less descriptive. A lot of Māori scholars talk about koha as a gift in recognition of the contribution that participants make. That's the most common form, and that's what a lot of Māori scholars are, how they're describing research. So we've got a bit of a traditional form. an idea of how some scholars have treated the topic. So how do research institutes deal with the concept of koha? Universities and other large organisations have very strictly defined parameters around what koha is. It's a frustration, we know it's a frustration. When it can be given, to whom, and how much. And there's actually quite a lot of difference between institutions. There's actually an enormous amount of variation. It's almost always described in terms of a gift. In some instances, it's described as a reimbursement. Not even that definition has reimbursement. The strict parameters define how much you can give. You cannot, it's nearly always in the form of vouchers. One university within Aotearoa has a document that outlines its processes regarding donations in koha and provides a definition of koha as an unconditional gift where the recipient neither stipulated that it be given nor has any expectation of giving it. I just want to draw attention just quickly there to unconditional gift. Another university asserts that koha is given without any obligation for that recipient to provide something in return. Without any obligation for that recipient to provide something in return. But hold on, that's not what Hirini Mead said, or Cleve Barlow, or Mason Jury. Mason Jury, in fact, says the opposite, that koha placed obligations on the receiver. So within a research project within a university, when you're designing the project, you fill out a form saying what the koha is going to be. Amounts can vary, very strict about it. Thou shalt not pay over a certain amount. And if you do, you will be required to seek approval. The higher the amount, the more signatures you need to have it approved. The Ministry of Health, it's produced its own ethical guidelines on koha and have included koha within their section heading reimbursements, koha and incentives. Again, reimbursements and incentives. It's grouped together. So it's pretty clear that the concept of koha is not understood at that university or institutional level. Or if it is understood, it's not appreciated. It's more than that. Now, the IRD has its own guidelines around the tax implications of koha. I have to say I was too scared to look at the tax page. Suffice it to say that they talk about an exchange of goods and services. If it's an exchange of goods and services, you're liable to GST. If it's over a certain amount, you might be required to pay PAYE, and so on. It's not koha. Unless that's what Takani gave Lily. So within the research environment, within the ethics research environment. So I just want to say something about the context that we're working in within a committee, within the ethics committee. So when participation in research incurs costs, so this might be a parking ticket, it might be a petrol voucher, it might be a train ticket, any number of things that someone might have to pay for to participate in that study. It's common practice for researchers to reimburse participants. Okay, great. But I would say, when we're seeing some of these ethics applications, we're increasingly seeing this referred to as koha. Participants might be offered a token sum as a way for researchers to say thank you, And I say a token sum because the sum must be of such an amount that it would not induce participation in a study. So that's kind of common practice. So what that means is I could offer you $5 to participate in a study, and you might say yes or no, but the $5 is not going to induce you. I could offer you $500, and if that $500 induces you to participate, then it's considered a form of power, where someone might not otherwise participate in the study. So it's considered that monetary incentives compromise a key ethical principle of free and informed consent. So this is well established. It's accepted within international guidelines. This is my personal bugbear, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself and not the committee, but I definitely think this is something that we should revisit. We incentivise lots of behaviour. We incentivise vaccination. We incentivise moves to electric cars, and those aren't bad things. That's my bugbear. So within the research context, again, we see this token gratuity being referred to as koha. Now, having sat on other ethics committees, we see this a lot from Pākehā researchers using that. And they might have the best intentions, but it's not right. But increasingly, we are seeing this type of language being used by Māori researchers. So what are the types of koha being offered? So the most common forms of koha are petrol vouchers. It might be a $20 voucher, it might be $30, $50 voucher, it might be grocery vouchers. Hardly something to cement a relationship with. So it's a little concerning that we're starting to see more Māori researchers use this. But there are other scholars out there who are articulating far more enduring forms of koha, and they provide us with some great examples. I'll just give a couple of examples. Jason Turuwhenua, he's over at the Auckland Bioengineering Institute. He's developed a electronic set of glasses which track the eye movement of pre-literate children, and it's testing for lazy eye. So as a part of his project, he's taken these into schools within South Auckland communities. Now his koha is, if they detect any abnormalities or any eye defects within the child who might require a prescription for glasses, they will provide the glasses. They will provide this prescription and glasses. Now to me, that's a beautiful koha. It's enduring. Changes people's lives. It's a fantastic contribution. I was talking to a colleague the other day, and one of her students provides taniko earrings to her participants, and the pattern on those earrings are now being used within the participant marae. So again, that's another enduring piece of koha. So actually, there's lots of time after this, but I would actually love to hear some other examples of what you have seen as good examples of koha. I've seen oral interviews being recorded and archived and access determined with the people in that study, so that these recordings become a taonga for mokopuna. Again, another enduring, lovely piece of koha. Now, when reviewing the applications that come before us, it is important that we see how the ideas around koha are understood. That's what we're looking for. If it is a reimbursement, call it a reimbursement rather than koha. So when developing research applications, this is my encouragement, is how are we thinking about Koha and our responsibilities towards those who are involved in our research. Giving Koha is integral to the process of establishing relationships within the research process. Lily's given great examples. The giving of Koha recognises the standing of the person, the giver and the receiver. Their whakaaro, mātauranga, their presence, involvement and contributions. These strong connotations of reciprocity. In fact, I've seen Koha translated as reciprocity in some places. We continue to see researchers expressing the need for development of Māori ethical frameworks that recognise Māori processes and ways of being, beliefs and values. So those ethical principles that I raised at the start, beneficence, non-maleficence, justice, and the other one. Are they important? Yes, they are. Are they universal? No. And I think the autonomy one is probably the clearest example of where that may not be a universal approach. They're not incompatible, but the challenge for us as Māori researchers is to ensure that we are leading the discussions around these ethical principles when working within our communities. And that we are leading and demonstrating how Koha is being used and the conversations around Koha. So we have to be very careful about how we're using our own terms and not falling back upon this definition. So I suppose, what I hope to have shown is variation in the term, but that referring to Koha as a gift, as only a gift, as a reimbursement, as a token sum, as a thank you, doesn't capture the social context and expectations implied by the term. Kia ora.
Moto, I was going to say Koha. Mōrero kia mātai. Me o whakamārama o te hōhunutanga o tērā kupu. Me kira o ngā kupu Māori katoa. E hare kupu noi hoa e. E Māori kei roto i roto i tahi kupu. Reira tēnā koe. Any pātai?
Or rather comments or experiences of Koha.
Okay. Kia ora tātou. Tēnā koe. That's awesome. I just wanted to speak about one thing around Koha, and I think it's actually about what we mean by research. Who is a researcher and what is the responsibility of a researcher. And I think with non-Māori, non-Indigenous research, you probably heard of the term the fly-by-nighters. They zoom in and then they zoom out. And they just get what they want, get the data or research, whatever they want to achieve to do the money that they've decided that they're going to do, which is often not discussed with the people that they are flying in to get information off, or nothing is given back to them that is of benefit. So I think it's about how we conceive ourselves as what is our role. And I think our role isn't a one-off. The role is which you've mentioned is about relationships. And also I think even to work with our communities, that's a privilege. But also we have to have a whakapapa to that community that we are working in partnership with, that we are working for. And often we don't even think of the research kaupapa or ideas. It's actually the communities themselves who know the mahi, know the challenges, know the problems, but they need someone to help them pull together some research which supports what they already know. So I think it's about how we conceive our role as within Rangahau, and also that it's not a one-off. It's a relationship building. So after the research project, it's not finished now, goodbye, thanks very much, my project's done. There is a responsibility to have an ongoing relationship with all of those that have been, that have allowed their kaupapa to be shared and to be used for the benefit of their own hapu, their own iwi, but also for all of Māori to help with all of our well-being. So I think it is really around how we conceive, our role as researchers, as Māori researchers, as Indigenous researchers. It's not just a one-off. We don't give you a $20 voucher. There is koha that I think that we provide all along the way. And we should be thinking about koha all along the way of being able to support not only monetary, if it is monetary, with petrol vouchers or whatever, but actually we need to conceive our whole research projects, which we all do, around how can we support the community that we are working with and that have called us in around a particular kaupapa. So there are lots of different ways that we do that by employing researchers, research assistants, community researchers. We employ people that are able to speak to their own whānau, because we can't if we are not from that particular hapu or iwi. There are all sorts of things, as well as supporting those who are doing their own study to work alongside and with to support them in their career development within Māori Health or whatever it is. So I think it's about how we conceive not just koha from a university or tertiary institution point of paying $20 and we tick the box, all done. No, that's not it. That's not how we do the mahi that we do, in particular around kaupapa Māori research. So that's just so I totally agree with all of the good whakaaro that you brought up around the issue for koha. And I think we as Māori, as Indigenous peoples, we know what is the appropriate thing to give back and be responsible for the privilege of working with our whānau, hapu, and iwi. Yeah, just
Tēnā koe tīpene kura, he weni whare.
Kia ora. E tuakea. So the first time I put in a research funding proposal was 1991, and I was not allowed to include koha or kai in the research proposal. And the reason we have koha, and I'm just saying this because I think it's a historical point that's important. The reason we in this country have koha is because of the activism and agitation of Māori researchers over the last 30 years, to the extent that I know you don't want to talk about tax, but it's now included in IRD. You can give up to $200 worth of value in a piece of research, and that is critical. We can't call it reimbursement. We cannot, because if you are talking to people who are on benefits and you give them $200 reimbursement, it affects their benefit.
Yes.
You are allowed to give them $200 of value up for koha without it in any way impinging on their tax liability. So I think it's really important to remember that the history, the whakapapa of the word koha in research came about not because of white benevolence, but because of Māori activism. So I want to hold fast to that word because it's part of the whakapapa of the evolution of kaupapa Māori research. And we define what it is. That's a critical issue. And so the only other point I wanted to add is to add to your wonderful definitions of koha, the work of Mānuka Henare around his identification of the notion of hau. So he found from the writings of Ranapiri, who was one of the informants of Best, and you talked about it, how Percy Smith and Elston Best had taken our kōrero or our kupu, our mātauranga, and they transformed it using their own philosophy. But when he went back to Ranapiri writing, and found the notion of hau, the explanation of koha made sense, because hau means breath. And I'm just a very potted version, some of you have already read it, but the notion of hau, so everything has tapu, but when we fashion something and we make something, it has its own tapu and its own hau, but it also has our hau in it. So when we gift something to somebody, we are giving them the tapu of the thing and the hau of the thing, but also the hau of us. And so hau has to be returned, because if the breath is not allowed to come back, it will attack you. So this is a notion of this is an economic system, right? So we give, and if it's not returned, then my hau and my tapu will attack you. So the economic system of koha as reciprocity is actually how our system worked. So to hold on to notions of koha is, I think, an important part of the revitalisation and restoration of our culture and our identity. This is not about generosity. Koha is not about generosity. Koha is about connection. And so when I go into that community and I give my hau, and I have to make sure that I give them opportunities to give back, that is about the forging of that relationship, which I think is a really powerful way for me to think about what happens when I go into communities. And so the last bit of koha, sorry, I'm banging on, but
bang on, Ella, bang on.
The last bit of research we did in Glen Innes, looking at the impacts of urban regeneration on the whānau there. And so what we did was we brought in a lot of the kaumata and kuia to help us, because when you go into a community, research at university, yada yada, nobody wants to talk to you. But the nanny turns up at the door, goes, oh kare, come talk to these fellas, they got kai. They'll come and talk to you. And so we taught all of these kaumata and kuia in the community how to be community researchers, and gave them a certificate as community researchers. And that was a koha, because that community now has a whole group, a rupu of community researchers with a certificate. I'd like you'll get a certificate today. It has validity, and it builds the capacity of the community. And so other researchers can come in and use that same rupu to have conversations with that community in an empowering way. So koha is important to hold on to it being a gift of food and money when you can, but also delivering capacity to that community through the other resources that you can give. I think is really a powerful way of giving back. Nō reira, ngā mihi, because thank you, that was really, really great presentation.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Oh, one last question.
Yeah, have we still got time? One more? I'm glad to save it for later if we need to move on. Oh.
I'm impressed with the amount of research that you did to bring this to the table. And I thought there was only one definition, and that was our definition. And now I'm seeing all these different ones being defined and used throughout Aotearoa. So thank you. We'll use it in our practices going forward.
Kia ora.
E pātai poto.
Yep. Just to kind of add to your kōrero as well, and thinking of this concept of koha and how I've experienced it, out with our whānau. So it's really interesting. So Ella, we still have those issues around, justifying koha. And I think a lot of the time too, when we're working, let's say with our non-Māori colleagues, a lot of them don't see it as koha, but see it as a bribe. And I've had many fights along the way to say, first of all, how dare you talk about our whānau like that? How dare you think that they're just here because we're paying them money? And I think there's a later conversation for us to have around, the concept of koha and utu, I think, as well. And utu being another concept that's been captured, I think, and misinterpreted along the way. But anyway, but my experience when I've been with whānau, when I've interviewed them, when we get to the end of that kōrero or that conversation, and I go to offer the koha, I can tell you 9 times out of the 10, that whānau say, oh, no, thank you. They say, oh, no. You know they need it. You absolutely know that they need that. But, you know, and what I see in that is that it's not me giving the koha, it's them giving the koha. This is them sacrificing, you know, and we talk about sort of beautiful sort of manifestations of koha. That is one for me. But then what I usually do in that situation is then I use you guys, my ethics committee, and say, you know what, ethically, I have to give it to you, you know. So I just wanted to share that, you know, and I love that concept of the hope, because I think that's what happens. And you know, those of you who our Kapapa Māori researchers, you know, when we're sitting with our whānau, you know, creating that space for reflection becomes sort of the gift. Not saying talking to me is a gift, but you know, that becomes a gift for that whānau. And I always have, you know, my koha through that whole process is that our whānau are in a better place by the end of our kōrero, you know. And it's so, I suppose, in the roundabout way, that's me and that sharing of hau there. So, you know what, kia ora, I just wanted to share that.
Kia ora.
Can't say no.
Oh, kia ora koutou. I was only sitting once today and I was going to keep my mouth shut, but I'm talking here and I sit on the ethics committee and I can't wait for the next screen. You know, it sort of speaks to me of should we even be having a koha section in there, because I go back to the methodologies around the research, and this concept of hau going backwards and forwards throughout the research speaks more to me than having a specific section on koha. So it might be that we assess applications based on that natural flow between participants and the researchers. E whakaaro tēnei.
Well, I'm getting the word twined up. Tia, thank you very much. You've certainly achieved a number of, I guess, outcomes and objectives from your kōrero. Really great to hear someone dive deep into not only the meaning of, or the multiple meanings of koha, but also the word itself, which I never knew, koha. Now it makes sense. Now it does, makes a lot more sense. Level, we might be able to pencil in a couple more speakers for next year. And, you know, I was just thinking when I wish my relations were here to listen to your kōrero. My cousin borrowed my lawnmower a month ago and I think he's treating it as a koha. Tell him it's not exactly a koha, but thank you. And I have, and based on your definition, and derived from the fact that we are we have cemented a relationship, especially through your involvement with the research committee, giving to you and reciprocating by giving back to us at the committee. I'm not going to take up too much more oxygen, but any committee, I believe, the primary requisite is to have people that are incredibly capable and competent, but also those that play well in the sandpit with others. And just the mihi to you all on the committee, mō koutou, tautoko tēnei kaupapa. It's a great committee to chair, as everyone gets on well. So, mō rene hoa, tēnā koe.
Tēnā. Kia ora koutou.